Hey everyone! So today we're going to take a look at a book called Cancer's Nemesis. And look, this is a pretty intense exploration of one author's quest to figure out what cancer really is. And it's a journey that was kicked off by some really deep personal loss. It all starts with one single, pretty staggering number. 30. That's the number that started this whole thing. Now, the author tells us that this is the number of close friends, family members, loved ones that he lost to cancer. And as you can imagine, a loss that big, well, it became the catalyst for this relentless, 5-year research journey to find some answers. He actually opens his book with this exact statement, and it just immediately sets the tone, right? This isn't some dry academic exercise for him. This is a mission, one that's born from grief, and it's what drove him to figure out why the conventional path seemed to fail the people he cared about so much. So, yeah, this first section really dives into how that profound sense of grief shaped his entire investigation. It's what made him start questioning the standard treatments that every single one of his loved ones had gone through, and it sent him searching for a completely different way of looking at healing. And what's really interesting is the way he talks about it. He actually coins his own term for the conventional approach. He calls it the PRS system. P is for poison, which is his word for chemotherapy. R is for radiation, for radiotherapy, and S is for slice, meaning surgery. And his big observation was pretty simple. This was the universal approach for everyone he lost. And in their cases, it didn't work. Okay, so that leads us to the absolute core of his argument. He uses this metaphor of the body as a garden. He basically proposes that cancer isn't some foreign invader that's attacking us from the outside. No, he says it's a symptom. It's like a weed that can only grow if there's a problem with the soil, with the body's own internal environment. And he has this brilliant way of explaining it. He calls it the fishbowl analogy. I mean, think about it. Our bodies are up to 85% water, right? So he says they're just like a fishbowl. If the fish in the bowl gets sick, what do? The problem isn't the fish. It's the toxic, acidic water it's swimming in. This is his version of what's known as terrain theory. And this line right here, this sums up his entire philosophy in a nutshell. Instead of attacking the symptom, the sick fish, he argues that our entire focus should be on cleaning up the terrain, that internal environment, or, as he says, just clean the water. So what exactly does clean water mean in this analogy? Well, the author points to this very specific number, 7.365. He actually calls this number sacred, claiming it's the ideal, slightly alkaline pH that our blood needs for optimal health. And the number itself is kind of like a memory trick. Health, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So building on that idea, he defines cancer not as the disease itself, but as a symptom of all these conditions you see here. From his perspective, cancer is just the end result of things like chronic inflammation, toxicity, mineral deficiencies, and even emotional stress. All things that create an environment where the body's own defenses just can't keep up. So what about genetics? You know, the "it runs in my family" thing. The author addresses that with this saying, which you hear a lot in natural health circles. He basically claims that only about 5 to 10% of cancers are purely genetic. For the huge majority, he argues, it's our lifestyle and our environment that ultimately pulled the trigger, turning on genes that might have just stayed quiet otherwise.
And you can probably guess where this is going. This critique of the body's environment naturally leads to a critique of the entire medical system. He presents his own version of medical history, arguing that the whole system took a very deliberate turn away from natural healing. Now, it's really important to say this. This next part is the history according to the author. He really frames this as a clash between two totally opposite ways of thinking. On one side, you have his PRS system, poison, radiation, and slice. And on the other, what he calls the God system, a system that he says is based on nature, the body's own intelligence, and what he believes is the real system of healing.
So in his telling of the timeline, 19th century medicine was all about herbalists using natural remedies. But then, he claims, the rise of the oil industry led to the discovery of pharmaceutical drugs. And the key moment, in his view, was the Rockefeller-funded Flexner Report, which he says was used to shut down natural medicine schools and pave the way for a patent-driven, drug-based model to become the only accepted standard of care. He's also really critical of how success is even measured in conventional oncology. He argues that celebrating when a tumor shrinks is totally misleading. And he uses this really powerful analogy. He says, trying to kill a tumor with chemo is like holding someone's head underwater. Yeah, you might suffocate it for a while, but the second you let go, the second oxygen comes back, it comes roaring back, gasping for air, and often way more aggressive than before. Okay, so after tearing down the current system, he doesn't just leave you hanging. He lays out his own blueprint. This final section is all about his actionable advice for what he believes can strengthen the body's terrain and actually allow it to heal itself. So to build that healthier internal environment, he says you first have to remove what's harming it. He pinpoints 3 main fuels for cancer, and he calls them SAS: sugar, acidity, and stress. He claims that sugar is like rocket fuel for cancer cells. Acidity creates the perfect soil for disease to grow, and chronic stress just floods your body with cortisol, which weakens your immune system.
And that logic leads to his dietary advice, which is pretty straightforward. Stop putting in the foods that harm and start loading up on the foods that heal. He draws a really clear line in the sand between whole, natural, alkalizing foods and all the processed acidic stuff that he claims creates a diseased environment inside of us.
You know, a huge part of his message is about empowering the patient, about taking your own power back. He gives a list of questions to ask, but this one really stands out. He suggests asking your doctor to step out of their professional role for a second and just answer as a human being. It's a shift in perspective that he believes can change the entire conversation.
So in the end, cancer's nemesis is really less about providing some single magic cure and more about shifting your entire mindset. The author challenges all of us to go from being passive patients to being active drivers of our own health journey. And that leaves us with this final, really provocative question. What does it truly mean to reclaim your own healing?